Hello and welcome to St. Bona Shootaround, the only show at Bonaventure that thinks it can handle the Legion of Boom better than the Broncos did on Sunday. We're your home for pre-game coverage of Bonnie's home games. I'm your host, Chris Spiker, and I'm joined by Taylor Negrelli, sports editor of the Bonaventure. Thanks for joining us, Taylor.
Thanks for having me.
This afternoon, the Bonnies host the Dayton Flyers on Alumni Weekend. But before that, let's check out how the Bonnies fared at Richmond in the team's second meeting this season. After both teams started slowly, the Bonnies grabbed a 14-point lead in the first half, capped off by Andel Cumberbatch's thunderous putback. But the Spiders cut the lead down to 5 at the half as Chandre Jones sank a 3 to go into the locker room. The Bonnies shot 61% in the first half, but were as cold as ice in the second. The Spiders regained the lead at 46-44 with 13 to go as Kendall Anthony drove to the hoop and nailed a mini fadeaway jumper. The Bonnies took back the lead at 62-60 when Dion Wright dropped this shot in the bucket with 3 minutes left. With 30 seconds left, Charlon Kloof was denied on a drive to the hole. The Spiders ran out in transition, and Kendall Anthony knocked down the game-winning jumper with 5 seconds left. Anthony scored 28 points on the night, leading Richmond to a 64-62 win. The Bonnies fell to 13-8 on the season and 3-5 in the A-10. Despite the Spiders losing leading scorer Cedric Lindsey before the game, the Bonnies dropped another close A-10 contest on the road. The Bonnies are 2-7 on the road, with each loss by about 5.2 points per game. With 3 of those losses on the last possession, along with the UMass collapse, what do those road woes say about the team, Taylor?
I think it means it's just their a run-of-the-mill A-10 team that just really struggles away from home. Even in Dayton, everyone in the bottom half of the conference, it seems, has trouble winning. In fact, I believe Dayton's the only team in the bottom half of the conference that has a conference road win. It just, for whatever reason, the Atlantic 10 teams have trouble playing on the road.
Definitely, and it's certainly a conference-wide problem, but I feel like the Bonnies do not have a go-to player in crunch time like they had 2 years ago with Andrew Nicholson or last year with either Demetrius Conger or Eric Mosley. And this year, somebody has to step up when we come down into February because this upcoming February schedule is going to be weaker with the next 5 opponents being sub-500 in the A-10. So hopefully they can find a premier scorer.
Yeah, that's pretty much been the problem the entire year. Matt Wright, Charlon Kloof, they lead the team in scoring, but they don't seem to be able to get that last basket at the end of a game, or they're not exactly elite scorers, and that's pretty much been the issue.
And part of the problem I think that they have in the second half is it seems like they're appearing to trade baskets with the other team. They're willing to sacrifice their defense because they think they can score on offense, and they kind of got into that in the middle of the second half against Richmond, and it backfired because they were down by 5 early on, and they had to fight back, and they only made 5 shots from the field, so they dug themselves in a big hole.
Yeah, it seems like their defense is night and day on the home and road. They're at home, they hold UMass to 65 points, and on the road they have games like Wednesday's game or the Duquesne game where they allowed over 80 points. It seems like second half on the road they just can't defend teams, and for whatever reason.
And I feel like there's a bit of an identity crisis too with the team because in the first half, Yusu Ndoye, Marquis Simmons, and Chris Dees had a combined 20 points, but in the second half they shied away from that down-low play. So do you think the Bonnies should become a perimeter shooting team or more committed to down-low play?
I think they should definitely be more committed to interior play. They do struggle shooting a lot, so I don't even really think being a perimeter shooting team is a consistent option because they've struggled so much that they just don't have a very good. They definitely don't have an elite shooter, and they don't really have any consistent shooters, and they're streaky at best. So I think that they should a combination of strong interior play and guys like Charlon and Jordan get into the basket. That'll really help. That'll get open shots for them, which is good because they really struggle to make contested shots.
Yes, and Ndoye has really become a formidable scorer down low, even though he still shows a bit of inconsistency that he had last season and the season before. But he's really stepping into his own as a player, and he'll definitely progress coming into next year. And of course, Marquis Simmons is versatile. He can also shoot some mid-range jumpers. And even Chris Dees has proven that a little bit to some extent. And of course, Dion Wright is a huge spark plug off the bench.
Oh, Dion's been the biggest surprise for me. He scored, I believe, 36 points all last year. He barely played, and we didn't really see any of them. And this year, he's great. They're 6 man off the bench. He can come out, score, rebound a lot, plays pretty solid defense, and he's pretty poised for a guy who doesn't have all that much playing experience.
Yeah, he's definitely stepped into his own both as a player on the court and almost stepping into a role where he could almost lead the team coming into the next few years. Well, despite their road woes, the Bonnies have been dominant at the O'Reilly Center with a 9-1 record. They will challenge the Dayton Flyers, who arrive in the Enchanted Mountains on a 2-game winning streak. The Flyers boast the best team field goal percentage in the A10 at 47.7%, and the second best three-point percentage at 38.1%. Dayton is led by senior forward Devin Oliver. Oliver averages 12.2 points per game and 6.8 rebounds per game. He is also the second A10 shooter in 3 points at 43.9%. Junior guard Jordan Seibert leads the Flyers in scoring at 13.3 points per game. Seibert is also fourth in the conference in three-point percentage at 43.7%. Dayton played a tough non-conference schedule and knocked off some good teams. At the Maui Invitational, the Flyers beat former number 11 Gonzaga and Cal, who beat number 1 Arizona last Saturday night. They also won at Ole Miss in overtime on January 4th. However, the Flyers got out to a slow start in conference play, with a 1-5 start in the Atlantic 10. However, the Flyers topped George Washington at home and dominated George Mason on the road last week. So Taylor, how do you feel that the Bonnies match up with the Dayton Flyers?
Well, I think they're two very different teams. As you mentioned, the Flyers are a very, very good shooting team. They're also very balanced scoring. They have 4 guys that average at least 9.8 points a game, and they can all pretty much shoot. They have a lot of guys that shoot 45%. But they do struggle rebounding, which should make for an interesting matchup because of how well the Bonnies do down low, especially at home. And the Bonnies, they do have a little trouble shooting, and they do have some trouble defending three-point shooting, so a team like that. So it's an interesting matchup. And Dayton does struggle on the road, and Bonaventure does wear it very well at home.
The home court advantage is definitely going to be a key for Bonaventure in this one. I also saw that Dayton is close to the bottom in the A10 in terms of rebounding, and that is one advantage Bonaventure definitely has to exploit in this matchup. It's going to be interesting on who is going to guard Devin Oliver, because Devin Oliver doesn't really have a comparative for the Bonnies. There's no player like him in terms of style of play and whatnot. So it's going to be interesting who they have to guard on him.
Yeah, your guess is as good as mine. I mean, it'd be interesting to see maybe they throw a big man type like Dion on him, but your guess is as good as mine with that.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely an uncertain matchup here because it's going to be two teams that are both 3 and 5 scrapping at the middle of the pack and trying to fight for positioning when it comes to Brooklyn. Is there any other matchup that jumps out at you, like where somebody has to take control for either Bonaventure or Dayton?
I think the biggest matchup, aside from the rebounding, will be the Dayton shooters versus the RC crowd, because I think that's really the only way to stop them is being an unfriendly place to play. And it's been like that all year. They're 9-1 at home. They're just a different team at home, and I think that'll be the big difference. Sure,
and of course the crowd will come into play, but at some point you have to look at which player is going to put a hand in the other guy's face. And is that going to be Charlon Kloof stepping up on Seibert, or is that going to be maybe Gathers playing a certain kind of defensive role that he wouldn't play normally? Or will we even see some bench help from Denzel Gregg, who had an incredible game against UMass?
I think you're going to see a little bit, well, obviously Charlon, to see a lot of Charlon, and he's a huge factor because he's by far the best perimeter defender on the team. If he can have a good game and shut down one of their shooters, that could be huge. But I also think you'll see a little bit more of Jordan Gathers than Andel Cumberbatch in this game, just with how much they're going to need to defend their perimeter shooting. I think you're going to see a little bit more Jordan, a little bit like Andel's a very good rebounder, and he has his benefits. But I think this game you're going to want to see a little bit more Jordan Gathers.
Definitely, I think Gathers needs to step back up after having a tough game last time around.
I agree. He's had kind of an up and down year, but I think this is his kind of game.
Thank you for joining us, Taylor. Glad to have you on.
Thank you for having me.
Once again, Taylor Negrelli is a sports editor of the Bonaventure, St. Bonaventure's student-run newspaper. This week's sports section features a story by Taylor about the second St. Bonaventure men's rugby player this year to withdraw from the university because of concussion symptoms. You can pick up a copy at various places on campus or visit www.thebv.org. Thank you again for joining us for another edition of St. Bona Shootaround. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/St. Bona Shootaround to watch our episodes. We'll see you again on Wednesday, February 19th before the Bonnies host Duquesne for the second time this year. From the Coop Lab, I'm Chris Spiker. Enjoy the game.